After God destroys the earth in a massive flood, we would now be left with a scattered picture of what once was. So, ladies and gentlemen, my question is, what was life like before the flood? This story begins once upon a time in a garden planted by the Creator himself. This is home. Your great-grandmother and grandfather lived here. Earth and living one, but nowadays they call them Adam and Eve. Now Adam actually had to keep the garden. It was his duty to tend to the plants, which gave them every single kind of fruit and vegetable they desired. The animals were nothing to be feared. But after that snake deceives Eve, our grandparents were kicked out. Ever since, the Garden of Eden has been lost. Adam and Eve moved to a mountain where they found a cave. They named it the Cave of Treasures. Eventually, Eve would have 2 sons, Cain and Abel, and 2 daughters, Awan and Azura. But after Cain kills Abel, he leaves his family and heads for this land called Nod, which means wandering. So Adam and Eve have a new child, this time called Seth. The sons of Adam had finally split off. A division was now created between the sons of Cain and the sons of Seth. The sons of Seth lived with Adam on their holy mountain, in communion with the Creator, but the descendants of Cain lived separately in the east, where Cain had built the world's very first city. When Adam lived 930 years, his death would start to quickly approach. Adam commands Seth to be embalmed and to be buried in the Cave of Treasures. He also makes Seth promise him something, to always keep Seth's offspring separate from Cain's offspring. Now Seth ruled his people with purity and holiness. Right above their home was paradise, filled with angels singing praises to the Creator, which inspired the people to live a life of purity. There was no sin, no anger, no envy, or any kind of impure thought that existed among them. The only oath that they used for swearing was this saying, "By the blood of Abel." As Seth's death was quickly approaching, he would pass his leadership to his son, Enoch. He forbade him to let his people mingle with the descendants of Cain. And when Enoch's life started coming to an end, he too would remind all of his descendants not to mingle with Cain's descendants. He blessed his son Canaan and then made him ruler. Canaan also ruled in holiness. Before blessing his son Mahalalel, he too would remind his descendants to stay away from Cain's line. When his time ran out, he would bless his son Jared, commanding him to guard Adam's body and to rule with purity. But in his 500th year, the children of Seth would break their oath and descended to Cain's camps. But sin quickly runs rampant in the cities of Cain. Cain's descendants end up worshipping idols of brass and metal. Fornication reigned among their daughters. Without shame, several women would run after one man. They fornicated in the presence of each other shamelessly. The old women were even more shameless than the young. Fathers and sons defiled themselves with their own mothers and sisters. Satan had been made prince of that camp. And when the men and women were stirred up by the devilish playing of reeds, harps, and tambourines, the sounds of their laughter would echo far above them, reaching even to that holy mountain. And when the children of Seth hear the uproar and shouts of laughter down in the camps of Cain, about 100 of them gathered together, setting their hearts to go down to that camp. Now when Jared heard these things and knew their intentions, he became deeply saddened. He called them to him and said, "By the holy blood of Abel, swear to me that none of you shall go down from this holy mountain. Remember the oaths which our fathers made us swear. Anyone who transgresses this commandment and goes down from this mountain shall never again ascend it." But the children of Seth simply ignore Jared and Enoch. They wanted to go down and see what that noise was all about. So down they went, leaving their holy mountain. When they arrive to the camps of Cain and see the daughters of Cain, the children of Seth are immediately stunned. They see how beautiful they were, but also that they were completely naked and unashamed. The children of Seth became inflamed with lust. And when the daughters of Cain saw the children of Seth and how healthy and strong and good-looking they were, Cain's daughters immediately chased after them, like ravening beasts to defile their bodies. Eventually, some of the children of Seth wished to go back home again, to their mountain, but as soon as they would try to ascend it, the rocks would turn into this flaming fire which made it impossible to ascend again. God would no longer permit them to ascend to that holy place. Now it came to pass when humanity started to multiply, and a lot more daughters were being born. The daughters of men were beautiful, and the angels, the sons of God, they saw and they lusted after them. They said, "Come, let us choose wives from among the children of men and beget us our own children." But Ciphered, who was their leader, he said to them, "I fear that not all of you will agree to this deed. I fear that I alone will have to pay the penalty for this great sin." So they all answered him and said, "Let us all swear an oath by binding us all together to not abandon this plan." And so they all swore together. And in the days of Jared, on the summit of Mount Hermon, 200 angels would descend down to earth with a most sinister plan. Every angel chose for himself a wife and defiled themselves with them. They taught them charms and enchantments, the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. But when they became pregnant, they bore these great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells. These creatures consumed all the toil of men, and when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against us and devoured mankind. Azazel, a fallen angel, taught men how to make swords, knives, and shields, and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth, and the art of working them. He revealed all sorts of ornaments, the beautification of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones. Because of this, there arose much godlessness. Through this, they committed all kinds of fornication, and were led astray. Ciphered taught enchantments and root cuttings. Armoros taught the resolving of enchantments. Barachiel taught astrology. Kokabiel taught the constellations. Ezekiel the knowledge of the clouds. Arachiel the signs of the earth. Shemasiel the signs of the sun. And Sariel the course of the moon. They all knew the secrets of the earth, bringing both knowledge and havoc. The angels exploited the fruitfulness of the earth, harvesting everything the earth produced. One day, these angels would choose 200 donkeys, 200 goats, and 200 beasts from the field, from every animal and from every bird. For miscegenation, they defiled God's creatures, breaking all sorts of natural boundaries, introducing a new kind of giant, the terrible monsters. These beings of horror only sought to feed on living flesh, but as men perished, their cry went all the way up to heaven, where God could hear. Something needed to be done. Enoch was the seventh from Adam, and a righteous man. He testified to those fallen angels who had sinned with the daughters of men. A great judgment was passed against them, and Enoch testified against them all, explaining that there will be no more forgiveness for these angels. Ciphered, Azazel, and all their associates are to be bound within the depths of the earth, never to see light again. Now Enoch's father, Methuselah, took a wife for his son Lamech, and when she became pregnant by him and bore a son, his body was white as snow and red as a rose. His hair was as white as wool, and his eyes were beautiful. Noah grows up. But one day, Noah is told by a holy angel, Uriel, he must hide himself. He is needed for a mission in the future. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, but the earth was corrupt in God's sight. So God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all people. I'm going to destroy them and the earth. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood and coat it with pitch. Bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female. Noah did everything as God had commanded them. When the floodwaters came on the earth, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. Noah and his sons and his wives and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Rain fell down on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and as the waters rose increasingly, every living thing that moved on land died. By the first day of the first month of Noah's 601st year, the waters had dried up from the earth. The ark had landed somewhere in the mountains of Ararat. Noah, together with his sons and his wives and his sons' wives, and all the animals and all the creatures that were in the ark, all finally come outside, one kind after another. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, before sacrificing some burnt offerings on it. The Lord smelt this pleasing aroma, and said in his heart, Never again will all life be destroyed by the waters of the flood. And I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and this is the sign of my covenant. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth, and the rainbow appears, I will remember my covenant between you and me.